We are really excited to be able to welcome someone in to talk about Jamie Worrell, who is the founder and managing director of Strategic Retirement Partners here Northeast. There's a new Department of Labor fiduciary rule that went into effect today. Now, this is regarding brokers offering advice on retirement savings accounts. Whole new changes, potential to affect a lot of money. So I believe Jamie is around the corner to talk about this. I think I saw him walk in.
He's here.
He's here.
Hello.
Jamie Worrell, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
This is
Good
the
to be here.
Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Excellent.
Let me put your right foot right here. We'll take a look over here. Tell us about this rule in effect today.
Sure. So the Department of Labor fiduciary rule goes into effect today. It was originally proposed in 2010, so a long time in the making. It's been through a bunch of different things, and finally today is the day. It was originally supposed to be effective April 10th of this year. Then it got delayed when President Trump came into office. So today is finally the day, and we're talking about the F word, the fiduciary word. So
what is it exactly? What was the lay of the land before, and what is it now?
So the lay of the land before was that if you're talking to an advisor, there's two different standards that an advisor may have to apply. One would be that what they recommend to you is suitable, and the other would be whether what they recommend to you is in your best interest. So believe it or not, there was no common standard there as far as whether someone giving you advice on your investments had to make sure that what they were recommending to you was actually in your best interest, not necessarily in their best interest. So it could be suitable for you, but still not in your best interest. And that was what a lot of this really was about, and a lot of why it really came into being and why people were really looking at changing the way things have been done.
How contentious was that? Again, this move from suitable to best interest. Did the financial industry really balk and say, "Oh, we like suitable's fine, suitable's fine"?
That's exactly what happened. You know, anytime there's a lot of hoopla around something, you know there must be something at stake. And in this case, there was quite a significant lobby pushing against this. So we had the Chamber of Commerce building targeted with a big, huge projector, calling it the retirement ripoff. And it was a calculator that was counting down. The government accounting agency calculated something like $18 billion in additional fees per year as a result of conflicts of interest and excessive fees. So yeah, the financial industry has definitely sort of looked at this as a threat to some of the money-making aspects that they've been able to take advantage of. And so I think that was really something that was at stake.
So if I think my plan's free because I don't pay any extra fees, I mean, isn't that good, or am I just not getting all the information?
Right. So we're talking about mostly the Department of Labor fiduciary rule really applies to 401k plans, 403b plans, Roths, IRAs, those kinds of things. And many times an employee or an even employer will think that their plan is free because they're not getting a bill for it. Mm-hmm. When in fact there are embedded fees. So the mutual funds or the investments that are in that plan have fees that are built into them. And there are indeed fees, and it's not free. So it's really important to understand that.
And as anyone who's standing here who's listening and has a retirement plan, why should they care about this rule?
Why should they care? Okay, I mean, I think it comes down to the government accounting agency, which says $18 billion a year in additional fees because of these conflicts of interest. So we're all working real hard to save money every pay period, and each investor really should care about what fees are being deducted from that, especially if they don't know. So it's important for them to ask and understand.
So at this point, I mean, what do you ask your advisor at this point?
Great question. So what you want to ask your advisor is, number one, are you serving as a fiduciary? What are the fees that I'm paying? And then what are the services we're receiving for those fees? Those sound like common sense, and obviously you'd like to trust your advisor relationship, and a lot of people do, but it shouldn't be a blind trust, and you want to ask those questions to make sure that you are getting that kind of advice and the proper kind of advice.
So if you ask and you get the information, but how do I know what I should be paying?
That's a great question as well. And there are ways to benchmark your fees. And one thing that we do is we benchmark our clients' fees against industry averages. So you should ask your advisor if you can do that.
Okay.
Now, their industry averages, those are averages. So that's not necessarily what would be charged for me specifically. So the only way to really do that is to actually go to bid. And so you take your plan to bid, and you can do that on a benchmarking basis. And those are things that get a little bit more complicated. You need a sophisticated advisor to be able to help you do that, and one who will act in your best interest and with full disclosure and no conflicts of interest. And I think that's really the key where you're going to get that good advice.
Okay, so ask if the advisor is a fiduciary, and then does the plan offer index funds? And then when's the last time the plan was put out to bid? I mean, these are all things that you should be getting from your advisor.
Yeah, if you're in a 401k plan or a 403b plan, you want to know how often is my employer actually benchmarking these fees, going out to make sure that they're doing what's in my best interest as an employee to make sure that my fees are reasonable and that my fees are competitive. And you mentioned index funds. Index funds is another thing. We've seen a lot of talk recently about index funds and how those are a way to lower your costs as an investor. And indeed that can be true, but you have to remember you need to look just at the investment cost as well as any other costs that are embedded in there. And that's part of the problem, is that you can get an index fund for the S&P 500 for 5 basis points potentially, but there might be other fees that are built in there. And so just having an index fund doesn't mean you're going to get the lowest cost.
Okay. I'm going to ask you just to take a little step back here. I think we're just trying to make sure we get the shot here so you're completely in. It's tough when we get someone who's tall in the studio here with us. So you're in the industry. So, what does this mean? I've got the questions as the layperson. You've been, watching this. What are you watching for in the next few weeks and months?
As an advisor or as an individual?
Both. Let's go put the advisor hat on.
Okay. So as an advisor, we're seeing this rule that's been anticipated finally go into place. And a lot of the community in the financial side has already been preparing for this for quite some time because it was expected to come into play in April. So we've all, there's been quite a lot that's just been sitting there waiting. And so you should anticipate that there will be some changes that go into effect now, but you've already been what they're going to be.
Okay, and as an individual, what should I be looking for as well? Again, having conversations with advisors?
Yeah, well, you may be getting some new paperwork to sign where your advisor is looking to have you sign a different form of contract than you had before.
Okay. Because
they're maybe changing the way they're doing business or they're trying to comply with the new regulations.
And what'd you say? I think you had a quote that this is the biggest change to retirement savings plans in the last 20 years?
I think it's pretty massive, yeah. So I try not to overstate things, but this is pretty massive. I've been in the business for over 20 years, and there have been quite a few changes, but this one's very significant from the standpoint of the investor. And I think, it has more to do with the end investor than it does with the advisor.
Okay.
Again, I think 53% of the investment community out there, the individual investor who's putting money in these things, already thought that it was required that their advisor be doing what's in their best interest. So
it's sort of shocking to find out now that, again, it was
yeah.
just supposed to be suitable. Well,
Yes.
but suitable for whom?
Right. So, 93% of people are in favor of this law as far as the individual community is concerned. Again, the investment community not necessarily unanimous in their support for this, but again, the individual investor definitely supportive of it.
And as you said, this goes back to 2010. We're talking about the Obama administration. Now we have a different administration.
Yes.
There's no possibility that this could end up getting rolled back or changed in the coming years, could it?
There is, actually. Yeah, in fact, the House just passed a bill, I think it was yesterday, that is seeking to reverse this. So the fight continues. For now, the Labor Secretary has said, let's go forward with this, but there are still skirmishes going on.
There is still friction.
So, yep.
So how does the financial services side then defend the suitable, saying, we're not going to do what's in your best interest? How do you defend that?
So I think what you're seeing some of the lobby saying is that the concern is that there might be an advice gap among lower income people or lower balance people, really, because and this happened in England, they made a law similar to this in the UK. And the UK, some of the studies are reporting that there is a segment of the population, the investing population, that's actually not getting served because the advisory community doesn't want to go through all the hassle of the things they need to do to comply. And so there's that concern. And so I think that the defense among the industry has been, well, if you make it too expensive and too burdensome and too compliance oriented to do this, then no one's going to serve that other segment of the market. So that whether that happens or not, I don't know. I think that that remains to be seen.
So you thought, you reached out and said folks should really know about this. Do you think the general public is aware of this rule going into effect today?
I don't think so. This is what we do every day, so we've been watching it, but whether the typical worker in America knows, I doubt it.
Well, I'm glad you were. Is there anything else that we need to hit upon that we just kind of scratched the surface? It's a very complicated issue, but it seems like it's a very simple rule in the outset. So questions you should ask your advisor. Anything else that we should be letting folks know as we're in here in the studio?
I think, we talk about your past self, your present self, and your future self in terms of saving for retirement. And the future self is the one that always gets the short end of the stick because we're either paying for student debt. The average person has like $37,000 of student loans and $16,000 of credit card debt. And then the present self wants to buy that new car. And the future self is the one who's saving for retirement, but again, usually gets the short end of the stick. So a lot of plans now are getting people into the plans as soon as they get hired. And I think that, if that's what happens, then, you ought to look twice before you get out. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to save as much as you can, get in as early as you can, and stay in as long as you can.
Okay. Well, Jamie, I appreciate your coming in to talk about this today. Again, this new Department of Labor fiduciary rule going into effect today. So I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you
okay.
very much.
Let you
Appreciate
out now that
it.
it's
Thank
stopped
you.
raining here downtown.
Thank you. Yep, thanks.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Was Jamie Worrell, now again the founder and managing director at Strategic Retirement Partners here in Providence, talking about again this Department of Labor fiduciary rule that just went into effect today. Now this is regarding brokers offering advice on retirement savings accounts. The previous standard had been in the offering advice for plans that were suitable for the individual. Now it has to be in their best interest. So Jamie was talking about things to ask your advisor and what this actually means for your retirement savings plan. And last time it was put out to bid. Lots of interesting questions to ask and be aware of as you're looking towards the future.